ASG acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today is the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Kumeyaay Nation. We recognize the indigenous peoples as original stewards of this land and all the relatives within it. As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed. Next up, we're going to have roll call.
Ashika Arasu, Alana de la Torre, Alexa Andrade, Arissa Lelevier, Ceci Baron, Chloe Cohen, Chloe Holmes, Claire Ingray, Daniela Velarde, Eliza Giru, Ezra Wheeler, Jake Dredd, Julian Rauda, Kayla Diaz, Kimberly Cruz, Lauren Bettis, Madeline Wu, Nadia Alfaraj, Sabrina Richards, Siri Dondu, Tiana Fee, Valentina Rodriguez.
Our next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do we have any motions to approve the agenda? We have a motion being seconded to approve the agenda. Do we have any further discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? And all those who abstain. Motion passes. Our next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Do we have any motions to approve the minutes? Siri?
I move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes being seconded. Do we have any further discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed, and all those who abstain. Motion passes. Next up will be reports from the Speaker of the Senate. So, Currently, I'm still in the process of doing outreach to fill vacant Senate positions. So I've reached out to community directors and also individual students that registered interest. So I'm in the process of setting up interviews and setting out applications. Also, I attended the SACPOT meeting with Justice last week. So that was good. Got some general updates from like Board of Trustees. Also attended lunch with President Harris and the VPs. Also just got to catch up and got some like updates on the general updates on from the administration, and kind of talked about what our goals are too as ASG. Also, committee chair training will be tomorrow from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. So if you're a committee chair and you're unable to attend, just please let me know. Also, you all should have gotten an email from Logan about office hours and how to log them. So please read that and get to logging your office hours, please. Also, that link right there is the Senate Initiatives funding form. So in the future, if you have an initiative that requires funding, you're going to need to fill out that form. So I'll also send it to you in email just for easier access. But just so you know that's there. There it is. We will also be taking headshot pictures next week after Senate. I can give you more details on that in the near future. And then Justice and I also would like to attend a committee meeting each month for each committee. So I'll also be reaching out in the near future to get that set up. Next up, we have reports from committee chairs and coordinators.
There are no updates for the academic committee.
So for the IDEA committee, I had the first meeting with my advisor this week where we just briefly connected with each other and we went over brief goals for the year and how to structure agendas for our committee meetings. I was also made aware of the expectations for this position and the time commitment. We briefly discussed like past ideas that students previously put forth while they were in this position and how effective they were when they were brought to like the administration and the student body. I also emailed all of the committee members to find a mutually convenient time for weekly meetings, and I plan on conducting a meeting next Friday. And since the librarian came during our last Senate meeting, we plan on connecting with her about ideas to make the space more inclusive and accessible. So I plan on bringing that up during our next committee meeting.
Hello everyone. For the student org committee, we have our first meeting after Senate, and hopefully in the next coming weeks, we hope to approve new and re-registering clubs. And I hope to have more news in the next coming week.
Hi everyone. The Student Life Committee is going to have its first meeting next Thursday, and we're going to have a brief meeting afterwards with the coordinators and myself to kind of go over our goals for the year and the direction we want to take the committee in. Everyone on our committee should have received an invite from me, and if your calendar is not updated, then I pick the time, and if it does not work for you, please let me know.
All right, I'm going to stand up because I've been sitting all day. So this right here, at the top left for you guys, Be Well at USD. That's the official Instagram handle for the Student Wellness Office. Please give it a follow if you're not already. They'll be posting about events, initiatives, things going on campus for student health and wellness. I hope you guys are interested and involved in that. And I'm just going to give a brief run through of things going on campus for health and wellness, just so you guys are aware and you can connect to your constituents or peers and let them know what's going on. So October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Obviously, the Student Wellness Office will be marketing certain events that are going on in coordination with that. So more on that to come in the future. On October 20th is Mental Health Check-In. It's a cool event that the Student Health and Wellness Office hosts every semester. They have counselors at the UC forums. You can go in, just get a quick check-in, talk about anything that's bothering you, and if there's any further issues, you can connect and make an appointment with a counselor following that event. And then just a brief introduction for me. I have an idea and plans to connect students to more resources on campus. I think we have abundant resources, but we're not very good at connecting students to them. So more to come on that in the future, but that's just kind of my plan. So thank you.
everybody. I'm Madeline. I'm your undergraduate sustainability coordinator. So any questions about sustainability, I'm your person. You can contact me at madelinelu@sandiego.edu. These are my office hours. They've been pretty lonely recently, so I'm just kidding. But you guys can come and also just ask me any questions about how to get more involved or for more information. I did some email outreach to sustainable orgs, although I did have a bit of a problem because it's not updated quite yet. So I ended up emailing people from last year, so that was not helpful. I've been talking with my advisor about this thing called Greener by Default. There's a hyperlink there, so if you guys want to check that out afterwards, it's basically kind of switching around the meal plans so that you would put vegetarian or vegan options first and then have like protein add-ons. So you're trying to basically shift the norm to be more sustainable. Let me know your thoughts, what you think your constituents would think about that. I'd like to know. And then finally, there's an Emergence Art Installation. It's a bunch of USD undergrad engineering students coming together to create this is the model. It's really cool. It's like life-size though. It's like a caterpillar you're walking through, and basically the idea is to represent kind of like what it was like in quarantine and with COVID. So they need a bit of funding. If you would send out to your constituents, let them know that this is happening. I'll probably also contact I'm forgetting the name, the terminology, but Sean, and the other ASG execs to see if we could get funding for that. Thank you.
Thank you, chairs and coordinators, for your updates. Next on, we're going to have reports from ASG Executive Board members.
Alrighty, hello everyone, happy Thursday. So just a few updates. Sean kind of mentioned it, but on Tuesday we had lunch with President Harris and the VPs. Our exec was there, and it was really great to kind of just exchange our updates with each other, so I hope to have more opportunities for those types of settings. Later today we're going to have a meeting with a few exec members with VP Johnson and Kai Snyder, who's the VP of University Operations, regarding feedback on COVID-19 policies. And also just wanted to remind you all that an email was sent to the student body yesterday regarding clarification on COVID-19 policies. It's titled COVID-19 Mitigation Process. I encourage you all to take a look at it, and if there's anything that's not clear or something else that you would like for the administration to look further into or to clarify, please let us know. You can let any of us know or Sean know. Exec discussed a project for our senators to do outreach with, so we'll talk a little bit later in the agenda. It's going to be an agenda item. And then Sean also mentioned this, but we're planning to visit each committee once a month. So just to the committee chairs, please let me know the times and days that you all meet, and we'll try our best to be there. Once a month is not enough, but we'd like to try to make an effort. And if there's a specific week that you would like for us to attend, please also let us know. Again, if you have any questions or concerns about anything, my email is up there on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Well, hello there, everybody. I was not here for the first meeting, so it's nice to finally see Senate together in person. But my name is Ari Zambrano. You've met me before during training. I'm the VP. But for my updates, so I attended the ACBOC committee, or Academic Committee for the Board of Trustees. So that was last Friday. And then briefly after, I spoke with Dean Bird, my bad, Dean Price, that's Dean Bird, about COVID-19 mask mandate in the library and what their protocol is. And just wanted to connect with her probably later upcoming next week to kind of discuss on how ASG can get more involved with that. But I imagine that's something I can connect with to one of the committees. I had University Senate, which is the reason why I wasn't here. So with that, a couple of updates on the admin side or the professor side. Administration is currently trying to create a protocol for professors who aren't enforcing mask mandates. That's something that's been prevalent on campus with certain professors not enforcing mask mandates or not following proper wearing them. And then as well as contact tracing and exposure emails, kind of what Justice had mentioned prior, clarification on that, so that came out as well. I'm also planning to meet with Dean Norton this Friday with the Chief Justice, Sarah, to just kind of discuss with her what our academic goals are, what our goals are as ASG is, and just further have that communication, that relationship with her. And then I'm planning to meet with the academic committee chair, Valentina, this Friday as well to talk about COVID-19 in the classroom and students. And then I also met with President Harris and the VPs on the ASG exec side. Those are all my updates. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Logan. Just some updates from me. I did ask last week that you had put legitimately everything that you do into your Google Calendar, so I hope you've gone ahead and done that. Please make sure to share it with me by the end of the day tomorrow. My email's up there. You should have also gotten an email from me regarding how to log your office hours and the expectations for that. If you did not get it for some reason, please catch me after Senate ends or email me there with any questions or clarifications that you need. Hi everyone, Sarah again. So judicial branch just got into session, so now we're gonna start getting all of our work done, which is really exciting. Parking reappeals court is now in session. It's gonna start October 5th, which is really helpful. And yeah, if you have any questions or concerns, my email is over there.
Hi everyone, happy Thursday. So first off, our Latinx event is tomorrow from 5 to 8 in front of the SLP and in front of the bookstore, so just so you know, there's also a food truck event going on, but we're going to be in both areas. So hope to see you all there. There will be Latinx clubs such as Mecha and Acha tabling, food from Latinx small businesses and performances. But we are in need of some volunteers, so if you are interested in volunteering at the event tomorrow, please connect with me at the end of Senate today or send me an email, and I hope to see you there. And then we have a San Diego Loyal soccer game event next Saturday at 7:30, so we're giving away tickets. So if you're interested, you can use that link to sign up, or then use that link to sign up, and that's on the Instagram bio as well and on the flyer. And then save the date. The homecoming concert is going to be on October 15th at 6:30, not 5:30, sorry. And then the homecoming tailgate is going to be on October 16th at 11, and the headliner will be announced really soon, so that's exciting. And then if you have any feedback or concerns, please email me there or you connect with me during office hours. Thank you.
Hi everyone. So last Senate I presented on the finances, so I just want to say a big thank you for your patience with me and sitting through that bit lengthy presentation. If you have any questions about it, please email me or come talk to me about it. I'd love to share more about it with you. ASGBC, we still have 3 chair vacancies: special interest, multicultural, religious, and spiritual. So if you know anyone that is interested, let me know. Student org event funding and request. Madeline and Ricardo, the controller, will be doing a presentation next Thursday for student org leaders for any clarification on that process. Q1 budget reports are due on Monday, and so the Finance Committee will be meeting soon. The Senate committee chairs are listed there, so we're going to be scheduling a meeting for that soon, and then we will approve it at the next Senate. And then, kind of like what Jake said, there's a bunch of resources available. I kind of just listed a few of them here, financial resources for you to look into, and if you know anyone that is in need, please tell them about these resources that ASG funds.
So hi everyone. So I just sent out the Google Forms again with the email for Meet the Team. And I also wanted to mention, as my role, I am going to be taking pictures and videos of you guys throughout the Senate. And I was also wondering if I can get 2 volunteers who are free 1 hour before Senate to help volunteer promote the next Senate. So you guys can also reach me through my email, and it is something that is going to start next week, and it's something that all of you guys can do if you guys want to do it, so you guys will all have a chance to participate. And then I also want to ask all you guys to stay after Senate just to be able to take a picture with Dr. Burden and Vice President Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you all for your updates. So next up, we're going to be covering the Student Organization Committee bylaws. What this is pretty much is that over the summer, student activities and involvement staff made changes to the Student Org Handbook and some processes that are outlined in the Student Org Committee bylaws. So they're now outdated. So I encourage you all to at least consider voting to suspend the Student Org Committee bylaws so that they may be updated by the Student Org Committee and the judicial branch. So if you do suspend them, they won't be in effect anymore. Don't worry, it's not gonna drop into total anarchy. We didn't have these student org bylaws until about a year or two ago, so it's not something unprecedented. But that being said, we are going to vote on that at the moment. So do we have any discussion on this? No?
I move to suspend the student org bylaws.
We have a motion being seconded to suspend the student org bylaws. Do we have any further discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed, and all those who abstain. All right, motion passes. Also, with student organizations, the next item on our agenda is the approval of returning student organizations. So orgs that are currently on campus that need to be registered will be shown on the next slide, and we'll be voting whether or not to pass or not pass them.
Hello, everyone. So every year, student organizations have to re-register in order to be a committee on, an organization on campus. So the following groups on the slides have completed the requirements for the registration process. Just to give some background information, it will not always look like this. Once we have new orgs, we will present their mission statement, purpose of the organization. Since all of these are returning organizations, they are all vetted, and this is why we are approving them as a whole. So with that being said, does anyone have a motion to approve all the returning student organizations? It is these two slides.
Madeline?
I move to approve all returning student organizations.
All right, we have a motion being seconded to approve all returning student organizations. Do we have any further discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed, and all those who abstain. Motion passes. Our next item on the agenda is the Constituent Outreach Project. So I'm just going to just describe it real quick. If Amanda, Jen, or anyone on exec wants to fill in, feel free. Essentially, so at least for us, we are trying to, on exec, get a pulse on how COVID has been affecting the classrooms currently with this whole transition back to in-person. We've heard just like anecdotally that, some classrooms are better than others, and there's a lot of variation. So what we want to do is also just get more feedback on that. So we're going to have 3 questions on a Google form that could be accessed through a QR code. And what we're hoping is to have senators go to their respective living areas or respective constituency and get these QR codes out and kind of get connected with their constituents. So we're hoping that could be done by October 7th. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if anyone wants to add anything, feel free. Justice?
So, hello everyone. I'm going to pass out the QR codes that you all can have handy, and when you reach out to your constituents, they can just scan it, and it's a Google form. I think it has 4 questions actually. It's just basically asking like what works for them in the classroom, what could be used to enhance in the classroom. And we're hoping to use this information and actual student experiences to then talk to the deans so that they're aware of what's going on as well, because we want to be as equitable in the classroom as we possibly can with the transition. So yeah, if there are any questions at all, please feel free to ask. Also, would really encourage you all to remember the segment that Amanda taught you all about how to talk to strangers. So really going up to people during your office hours and asking, could I just get a few minutes of your time to fill out this Google form so that we can figure out what the pulse is on campus regarding the transition to back to in person.
Okay, so our next item on the agenda is a presentation by Dr. Christopher Burden, Associate Vice President of Wellness.
Thank you all. Can you all hear me? I want to make sure it's audible. Thanks. And thank you, Sean. Thank you all. And I just want to start by saying thank you again just for this opportunity to be with you all. I'm very, very grateful just to see the great work and important work that you all are engaged in. And Sean had asked that I might speak with you in 30 minutes or less, so I will try to be brief. But it's a very complex, important conversation around how are we being impacted in our current climate, and how is our wellness being impacted, how is our community being impacted, and what can USD do as a collective to respond, and what are we trying to do specifically in student wellness. So as I share that content, I also want you all to know, and I've shared this with other folks in different spaces, it's very important to acknowledge that while some of what I'll share is statistics and some theory in mental health and well-being that is considered important for all universities, this is what I'm going to talk about is impacting all of us, our student communities, student leaders, faculty, staff. So really, please be compassionate with yourself and be gentle and engage at whatever level feels comfortable for you as we have the conversation today. And just know that I will be here afterwards as well to connect individually if that's helpful for folks. Just as a way of introduction, I'm not necessarily new to the community. I've been here at USD for almost 15 years, but I am new in the current role that I occupy, which I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Student Wellness. And I use he, him, and his pronouns. My office is located in Saints across the way here. And so that's my contact information. I share that with all of you to know that one of the elements of my role that energizes me is the opportunity to engage in conversations and be a resource and a consultant to not just student leaders like yourself, other folks, but I really want to make sure that you know that I'm here to support the work you're doing and to be a resource, particularly during this challenging time. So just briefly, sometimes some folks like to know a little bit about what I'm going to try to spend some time with you all today expressing, is looking at what are some of the wellness trends in our current climate. And again, this is going to be quite brief compared to what we could share and all the complexities that folks in different individuals and communities are navigating. But I wanted to at least start this conversation and get a sense for you all so that you have some ideas and opportunities to dialogue around some of these concepts. Also looking at how can we respond as a collective community, as student leaders, as professionals, and then also some practical elements too, from an administrative point of view. And so we'll talk about some of those, and obviously having some opportunities for questions if folks have questions. Okay, so looking first at what are the wellness needs of students at USD? And in many ways, and some of you probably know this, that the reality of increased and complex emotional and psychological challenges for human beings in the United States has started even in the last 10 years. Currently, there's a lot of data to suggest that some of the complexities are analogous or concurrent, I should say, with the emergence of the smartphone, for example. And some of those, I always want to be sensitive to those realities in that current research, and know that there's lots of elements of those technologies and that are very positive and very connecting, which are useful in our moment right now. But basically, I think it's important to know that we find ourselves and you all are serving in your roles in the most complex, challenging, and I think also, as I'll speak to, some of the most unique opportunities that we've had in university communities with regard to well-being that I've experienced in my 20 years working with students. But there is a context that's important, I think, for us all to think about. And one of the elements of the complexity in terms of a response that we'll talk about in our time, and I already hear it happening in the work that you all are doing, is the idea of collaboration and how important that is. And that counseling centers, way back in many years ago, were often situated in the corner of a campus. I know when I was at a university, you'd have to go kind of a little bit of a distance to find the space to have a counseling conversation. However, it's much more of an important and I think a wonderful development that we are, particularly at USD, are situated really in the center of campus. And we'll talk not just in one spot, which is another important piece, but partly it's because the importance that we're seeing increased utilization of counseling services is because, thankfully, students, and I have to say, your generation of leaders have helped to reduce the stigma. It's not gone. There still are many challenges. But I think accessing counseling services and wellness conversations is becoming more of an opportunity for us, and I think that's important. We're in the process of planning to do our National Collegiate Health Association survey again. It was paused, unfortunately, due to COVID, but I just share this briefly. This won't surprise any of you that our community is very similar to other folks at other universities, experiences challenges in a lot of these domains. You can see that if you look at just the trend, and we anticipate this trend to continue to go up, is that all of these dimensions of our experience are increasing in their stressful nature. Academics, intimate partner relationships, you see all of those elements. I would say that finances, particularly since in the last 14 months, and I'm sure many of you are very aware of this, I would expect that to be a little bit different than as it's presented, at least historically, because of the nature of all of the challenges with COVID-19 in our communities here and beyond. And I would share with you as leaders that students are really seeking some opportunities to think through financial stressors and safety and conversations regarding managing these challenges. And I'm sure that's, like I said, not necessarily new information for you all, but it's I wanted to note it because I think it's underrepresented, if you will, on this paper. So moving just in the interest of time to our current context and looking at COVID-19, and certainly I know there'll be opportunities, and you all have started to have conversations around the important mitigation efforts. How I'm thinking of that is sort of the impact of the virus itself, of COVID-19. One of the elements that I'm trying to talk to folks on campus about, from my perspective, is the impact of COVID-19 on our own well-being, if you will, in terms of our psychological experience, our mental health. And as many of you can imagine, when COVID-19 began to impact the world, the incidence of mental health concerns began to rise, including the incidence of substance abuse concerns. And so all of these were these challenges that I mentioned at the beginning that we were seeing emerging in our world even 10 years ago. And like you probably heard other experts talk, I don't want to include myself as an expert on the global notion of COVID-19, but it was in many ways, it exposed so many challenges, inequity, and we'll talk more specifically about in terms of the structural oppression and problematic elements of the societal realities that were exposed during COVID-19. And so I think concurrent with that, mental health and substance abuse, we're seeing those are also associated with that. So the recent social justice factors that I think also were occurring during COVID-19 are still with us, obviously. Racial injustice and increased violence towards folks who hold marginalized identities. And then particularly important for our conversation today is the impact on healthcare inequities and disparities that continue. So all of those complexities can feel very overwhelming, can sound overwhelming, and we can experience them as such. And so I just want to name that. And this is not my term, this is a term that kind of helps university healthcare folks think about all of those realities that I just mentioned. And this really, if you're interested in this further, I would be happy to chat with you about it. But it really comes from a notion that started in the Canadian Health Service. And it's the idea of an eco-pandemic. And I would like to suggest that we're experiencing that in our community here now. It's this idea that we are here, and many of us have an opportunity to pause and engage in community. I was just mentioning to Jen before, there are dozens of our students are outside this space. Folks have been coming to different spaces, and it's this paradox of this desire to reconnect. And when that happens, it's almost like during the pandemic, we were in a kind of a survival mode. And so if we have this kind of delayed reaction for anxieties, and I'm purposely calling them anxieties because it helps me think of it not as like the traditional medical notion, but just this sense of being kind of keyed up. Even naming that we're all here in this space. This is the first time I've been in this space in 2 years with folks, and it just feels a little different. And so the eco-pandemic is helping us understand, conceptualize, I should say, that our communities are returning, still managing the virus, but also having these different emotional reactions. And I would say that I'm particularly sensitive to our first year or new students that are new to community here. And I think that's a reason I say that is there's a sense that if you were experiencing educational community before USD and you were online or you had no in-person opportunities, and then you come to a completely new experience and you're still also having to navigate this environment, but also navigate what it's like to be in an interpersonal context. There's a sense that could be challenging for our community. And I think we're seeing some of that just in the few opening weeks of the semester. So I wanted to name that for all of you, and make sure that we have conversation around that as leaders. One other theoretical piece that I think is important, and I would encourage you all to consider if you have a chance. There's some good YouTube videos with our current Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, and he has done research, ironically, long before the pandemic regarding a loneliness epidemic. And not to go into too much of the details there, but if you're interested in that too, I think it's a very interesting, important notion. But before the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Murthy was talking about the fact that we are increasingly lonely as a society. It seems and not just adolescents or young adults, but also adults. And so he was seeing that in his different public health contexts and seeing increased reports of loneliness. And he published this book called Together, which is a wonderful book about what to do and how to build community in the context of folks feeling lonely in April of 2020, right in the heart of we all were socially distanced. So that's still, I think, part of our reality. But this is also where the hope comes. As I walked across and I heard student voices that I haven't heard in these spaces in 14 months. And I've been to different places and we've thought about, oh my goodness, there's so many folks in the room, where can we all be? So there's a very strong desire that's coming from our community to be together. And just thinking of the events that you all were talking about coming up this week, I think that's really, really important in a way that maybe 2 years ago thinking about promoting events didn't feel as critical to a conversation regarding wellness and well-being as it does right now. So that's something that I think is really, I'm very optimistic about. Because like I say, in this loneliness epidemic that is being documented, and COVID-19 came. So just to look a little bit at our current USD context and thinking about how students might be experiencing their lives here. This is not going to surprise folks, but I wanted just to name some of the experiences in terms of fear and worry about health is a continuing concern. There's also some uncertainty, and we are continuing to think about the vulnerabilities that come from unknowns, a series of unknowns. I don't know if you get questions from students saying, what's going to happen in the flu season, or will we be online, or all of these big questions that could impact our lives in so many ways. There's still kind of that series of unknowns that we're managing, and anytime, we believe in psychology, when folks have to manage unknowns, stress goes up. And you all know that when you're kind of wondering, how is this person going to assess this document or this paper, right? Or we all have those moments. And those are natural feelings, but unknowns create more stress and anxiety. So when we have those on a larger scale, it's an important impact on our well-being. And a sense of feeling helpless and feeling unsure of what to do. And then even though we have this desire for community building, some folks are unsure how to access those spaces and feel uncomfortable, so there's maybe a sense of isolation too. It's really important for us to really prioritize how are we going to help folks identify opportunities for self-care. And this is my own personal, not to necessarily limit news consumption, but maybe choose one source. And I've been trying to work on that myself. I don't think not having, particularly for you all, being leaders, being informed is crucial, but just knowing that we have so much opportunity to have information come at us, just trying to make, okay, what's the source I'm going to check? And then the other part that helps is identifying when I'm going to review that news. Make a decision about, do I want to do that first thing in the morning? Or do I want to text someone that I'm feeling I want to connect with? Or when do I want to take in information and news? Because it can feel like if we make some choices around those simple elements of our life, it can help us have a sense of feeling a bit more in control. So, a lot of information, like I said, that was very brief, a lot of complexity to all of that. But we want to think a little bit about how can we respond to these realities. And I'm going to go from kind of the theoretical to some of the more specific and concrete elements. And some of you know this, but we are trying to really focus even more than ever on having different access points for student wellness and counseling, for example, in Saints across the way, as I mentioned, where my office is located, and also in this building in the Student Health Center and in the Center for Health and Wellness Promotion. And a lot of the experience that students are having may be purely a desire to access a counseling conversation, but it might also occur in the context of a physical concern or a different conversation. So we just want to reemphasize that from an intentional point of view at USD, we would like to have students know that they can access mental health services in various ways, in various spaces. And that we want to try to meet, the best we can, students' comfort level with accessing care. Our mental behavioral health team, what we call, that's kind of the different folks on campus that help us think about counseling and psychological supports, offer a whole range of therapies and opportunities to meet. Since COVID-19, both the health center and the counseling center have also sought the HIPAA compliant, if you will, kind of a confidential online telehealth system. So students can access that. I will say that many of our students that are newer to our community are really desiring in-person meetings. So it's still there, because I think some folks might find it, we want to be as accessible as possible, but I just share that also as that notion of the desire to connect is strong, and we're seeing it in so many different ways on campus. And obviously, routine appointments can be accessed online or always by calling this number 4655. And we have, in the last 2 years, 2.5 years really, transitioned to centralizing all desires for mental health support to that single number, so that it can be more easily recalled by folks who need it, and also it helps identify what the need is. So students can still call another, like the public safety office if they needed, but we really wanted to, for various reasons, really focus on having this number that doesn't make calling a different office on campus part of the process to seek support. As you can imagine, and you probably are aware, our community, which we're very grateful for, is seeking out connection, seeking out support in different wellness spaces. And one of the realities is that we have to address how we're going to expand our own capacity. So, for example, I was in a meeting earlier today to talk about adding new counseling staff. And I think that's a very important part of what we're trying to do. And I feel very optimistic that we can do that and have open positions posted in our spaces. One of the other challenges, but I think opportunities, is that students are also asking for space to have conversations. Space that feels safe and accessible and focused on experiences and acknowledges various identities and realities. So we are really also trying to enhance, and we have been trying to do this the last year. Some of this came online during the pandemic, is to have more group conversations that occur outside of wellness spaces. For example, our Empower at USD is a group for Black identified students that focuses particularly on the realities of being at a PWI, a proudly white institution for folks who identify as Black. Also, we're working with our first-gen students and trying to identify where spaces might be to have a confidential, safe space conversation. If students are desiring that, we want to be flexible and try to offer those pieces, as well as our traditional groups that are oriented towards stress management and coping skills. We've adjusted some of that so that some of that content will be asynchronous, although I feel like that term has lots of connotations, particularly for folks that have that academic experience, but so that people can still meet in person, but also have some content they can keep on their in their portable handheld device, for example. Again, one of the positives of the reality of smartphones. The last piece that I think is really important, that seems sort of vague, but I think it's critical, and this is what the literature is really sharing, and I'm very encouraged because Vice President Charlotte Johnson is encouraging us to engage in collaborations across campus, and really think about how do we engage the community in a way so that when folks enter different spaces, there are students, student leaders, staff, if possible too, who can be present for different conversations regarding well-being, regarding mental health in the context of our current world, and also probably most critical for this semester and this year is the idea of connection and community building. Again, like I said, so many of the work that you all have helped support have been well attended. I was in a meeting this morning, and many of the folks there, we kind of did a general check-in about this topic and we're meeting intentionally to try to think about how are we hosting conversations so that students feel like they can talk about their experience of well-being and mental health in a way that's community focused. And everyone in the room, actually all three examples, all shared spaces that were exceedingly well attended, and I think anecdotally they shared it was the largest number of folks that entered some of the conversations that they had seen. So that's where my hope is coming from, and is to know that we need to really be present to folks who need that kind of connection, but also be very intentional for community engagement. One thing that's coming up, this is a bit of a, I just want to mention, I'm being conscious of the time, but I want to at least offer this as an idea so you all can think about it. One, particularly for, like I said, folks that are new to being in person or being in our community, naming that that it's okay to feel a range of reactions as you enter everything from a parent share experience in a classroom, or maybe a small group conversation in a meeting, or any other kind of experience. If there's opportunities to name that could feel unusual or feel different, and it's okay to validate the range of feelings that folks may have, I think we've gotten some feedback that that's very helpful, just to name. And I'll share, I was in a class with a student who shared with me, I enjoyed that conversation, but it just felt a little different. And this was a class experience, it wasn't confidential. But that's what got us thinking about that. And I'm curious what you all think about that in terms of working in different spaces on campus. But very simple idea, but it's linked to this acknowledgement of our context and also helping to foster community. A few other enhancements that I think are really important, I mentioned earlier, is our after hours enhancements, and thinking that we have seen students utilize this more in the last 6 weeks. Is just that we have a counseling opportunity and an urgent response opportunity for students throughout the day, and particularly the weekend and into the evening, and so I just wanted to name that too. And we're hoping that this, again, the 4655 number really helps to reduce potential barriers or any kind of resistance to accessing support in an urgent situation. It's really important too that if you're with a student that you're wanting to help seek support, or you want to share in a confidential manner a concern about a student, anyone in our community can call us to try to help identify a care plan. And so I always want to mention that to student leaders as well, and know that we're here to support you in that work for ourselves and for our community. Another really important effort that I think will help us and help our community, and I would ask you all to help us get the word out about QPR training. These are opportunities to think, and it's an evidence-based model called question, persuade, and refer. It helps folks enhance their comfort with asking challenging questions regarding mental health, particularly suicide. And I just wanted to name that those are opportunities that are coming. We're offering these to students, staff, and others in the community, and that's a little bit of the information there. And you can email us at chwp@San Diego for information about that. But I would just feel really wonderful if folks really knew about this, and if it fit with their schedule, took an opportunity to engage with us in these trainings. And thank you, Jake, for mentioning our mental health check-ins. We moved them up a little bit intentionally in the calendar, and those will be in the UC forums. I think community and connection, those are not just, like I've mentioned so many times, those are not just words, those are really, we think of them as well-being initiatives, particularly this semester. And of course, food is traditionally something that's important to help students feel comfortable and create access and excitement around. So that will be our mental health check-ins. It'll come just in a few weeks. And again, like Jake said, it's an opportunity for folks just it does a lot of things. One, when there's a lot of folks that are there, it does an amazing job of validating and reducing stigma, because you walk by and people just see people eating a burrito. Traditionally, that's the food that students request, and they're just having an experience of community, but also checking in on their well-being in a way that we might not have done in another context. So it also has a really important element just in terms of helping folks feel like this is something that USD takes seriously, and we want to try to create community around. last thing I'll say, again, is just to say thank you and to let you know that I am very optimistic because of the fact that very early on in the academic year, you all thought about inviting someone from our work area in wellness to be with you, and that you all having these conversations. So honestly, I believe, and the research will support this, that community, collective, collaborative responses to all of the challenges that we're all navigating in different ways is the key. So I just want to say thank you for that, and hopefully there's still some time for questions or dialogue if that's appropriate, Sean, but I'll defer to you.
Yes, we do have time. I just want to say thank you again so much for coming today. Also, I myself have done the QPR training before, so I definitely recommend it. Just with that being said, I think we'll move on to questions, right? So does anyone have questions for Dr. Burden today? Jake?
First off, thank you for coming and presenting. You mentioned in the resources for students on campus that there's brief therapy and short-term / bridge psychiatry services offered. Is that the most effective method to address students' mental health needs?
I think for some students, Jake, you're wondering in terms of do students access individual services? Is that the most effective?
Well, I guess my question more is like only offering brief services, is that the most effective method, or is connecting them more long-term better?
Thanks, I see what you're saying. Yes, there are certainly our average in terms of students who choose to engage with us. Even most students will self-select to stop after about 4 to 5. And that's kind of consistent in counseling in general. However, we do offer opportunities to connect on a longer term basis, particularly if there are access challenges, or if there's a complex concern that it can be benefit to have access here on campus. So certainly, and the other element of that's important to say too, Jake, that even there is no session limit. And I think that's an important piece I want to message, and I appreciate the question, that some universities have that. We don't have a session limit. So even if someone were to come for 10 sessions or 15 sessions, or more than that in an academic year, students can always return. There is also, I think for the psychiatry piece, for sure, we have, it is a bridge model, because oftentimes what we want to try to do is help students get a sense of what, if a psychiatric medication is helpful, to have a sense of what that might be. And really the idea there is to help students connect with us while they're waiting for a community provider in terms of psychiatry. We only have one psychiatrist on campus, so that helps us do that. But I also think that there are some students that there are access barriers, and when those occur, we often have an opportunity to think about creative opportunities, more on the counseling side than the psychiatry bridge care side. Honestly, the most effective in the research, quickest mental health approach is group therapy. There's lots of challenges to that, but for lots of us. But I just thought I'd mention that too. And we're kind of seeing our group. When I first arrived at USD many years ago, our groups were very small. Now they're much more robust. There's many people there. So I do think also in terms of what helps folks feel more connected and feel more well in terms of timing, group therapy is a really important piece. But we do call it brief therapy, but brief therapy is, just going back to your initial question, Jake, too, there isn't a number with that. And so I would say that some students will find that they are meeting with a counselor for a semester or longer. Some might be less. The other element that we're trying to also manage with that is that one of the things that USD has never had to manage is a waiting list. And so even if there's always 8 hours of open time at the counseling center. And that is important to know so that if someone looked online and saw that there wasn't anything available for 10 days, and we're actually changing our messaging on our online system to help remind folks of this, you can still walk in or call any day and always see a counselor. And that's an important piece because we don't want folks to not interface with us to help create plans when there's an urgent concern. Briefer models of therapy help us kind of navigate that tension, but it's always something that is important to look at individually with the student and the counselor too.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for asking.
The allotted time for this section has ended. If senators want to vote to extend this time, you're welcome to do so.
Sassy?
I move to extend the conversation or the allotted time for an extra 10 minutes.
We have a motion being seconded to extend the time by 10 minutes. Do we have any further discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed? And all those who abstain. Motion passes. Do we have any further questions, comments, concerns for Dr. Burden? Ezra?
Thank you for being here. I just wanted to ask if there's any specific ways that you're addressing the dramatically increased level of grief in our community, and how that's being handled and going to continue to be handled.
Thank you for that question. I think that's an excellent question and very emotionally intelligent. There is a sense of grief and loss. One of the elements that I think is important for us to address in terms of that question is how being diverse in how we address that grief, whether shared space, safe space, confidential space will help. We actually had a conversation last week about what kind of group experiences would help folks bring experiences of grief to community. But also I think another element of that is just helping our own folks, professional staff in wellness and beyond, also think about grief and loss. And I don't know all the, everyone is having it, but I think it's such an important question because it's so replete. There are different layers of loss and grief that folks are experiencing. One example that I think is important for, just one element is the loss that the COVID-19 pandemic has imposed on folks in terms of academic spaces or academic years or trajectory, but there's also personal and interpersonal experiences of grief too. And so I appreciate you naming that as an important element. And it's absolutely something we're thinking about. And actually, one of the things I was thinking about the other day is thinking about how we help, what kind of conversation would be helpful not only for staff but also for communities. So would if possible to hear more from your expertise about what that might look like or how we might meet those desires for connection with the community around grief. Thank you.
Do you have any further questions for Dr. Burden? Yuri?
Inclusive and accessible and having more group conversations. I just wanted to ask if you had any
Well, one of the spaces, there's a formal space, but it's identified, and I was gonna, oh, I can't show it because I'm not using my computer. But we have a women of color discussion group that again is housed in the women's commons, and that's the tradition. Thank you so much. That group has been part of our community for many years, but I think that is one space that is intentionally in the evening, and food in community building is there in that space. In addition, we also identified a space that's, I'm trying to think of the time, our Rainbow Process Group is also a space that is being offered this year, and I think that's during the daytime. It's on our website, so I can share that back with folks that have those. But those are two spaces that I think we've traditionally offered. I and another colleague of mine offer a space for folks who identify as male, and it's an evening space. And there's also a space called Understanding Yourself and Others. That is more of a traditional kind of counseling space. So all the spaces I mentioned earlier, you can just drop in and access. There's no need to necessarily interface with the counseling center. But that space is Understanding Yourself and Others is a more traditional counseling group. But it's been very well attended over time. And so I just mentioned that as well. And I'm also trying to think about other space. Oh, our coping with stress space. We're also offering on Wednesdays an opportunity called Wellness Wednesdays, which there's been conversation about having that be located in different places, not just in the Center for Health and Wellness Promotion. That will be it's an intentional space that folks can just enter and have a conversation regarding well-being in place, unlike a counseling, like a one-on-one counseling place.
Do we have any further comments, questions, concerns? Lauren?
I do have one quick question. How do you recommend we support students who maybe are feeling like some groups of students on campus aren't taking the pandemic as seriously as it should be now and are feeling a little bit unsafe in their spaces? And I don't know, just how would you recommend navigating that?
Thanks, Lauren. I really appreciate that question as well. I would also want to lean into your expertise on this topic, very much so. And I think it is a behavior change. Put it in my mental and behavioral health lens. Behavior change. We have some research on how folks develop new behaviors. Everything from a personal behavior, such as, let's just say you start a self-care behavior, and you just were intentional about doing it, and it started to shift. So we know how to do it on a more individual basis. For example, if you decide to choose a different food or integrate new physical practice. So there's some of that I think is important, and one of the things that helps folks start to make some decisions different is awareness of the consequences. Not in a punitive way, but consequences that are more warm and sensitive. So I say that as a context to think about mask wearing or COVID mitigation efforts. What we're trying to do is try to have conversations with folks that are starting to think about what's the consequence if I go to a concert and I don't decide not to be as intentional about mask, facial covering wearing, and do it in a way that's person-centered rather than prescriptive, if you will. So I think anytime you can work with anyone regarding a behavior change that's coming from their own experience and using whatever consciousness they're currently bringing, that helps. That's a fancy kind of psychobabble way of saying telling someone to do things doesn't often yield many good results. We could have lots of public health campaigns that have tried that in our culture and have not been successful. So practically, going to your smart question, Lauren, is if there's an opportunity to, like we've had folks after an event, and folks have entered our space, maybe we have the opportunity to talk about mitigation, and they're starting to think about, oh, maybe I should have done something differently. We want to try to yield those moments, not yield during those moments, but lean into them and say, oh, okay, what are you thinking might have you done differently? Not from a place of shame or judgment, but a place of helping, we call it consciousness raise. So with peer conversations, just listening, if someone's kind of thinking, you try some consciousness raising questions can be very useful. If someone's really kind of hardened in their space, and not maybe kind of not very open to other ideas, you still want to use consciousness, you use kind of purely consciousness raising, but in a gentle way. So information, passive information. That's why we try to do some of those things passively in terms of our signage. But using conversation as an opportunity to help people think about what they might be open to engaging in terms of behavior change is very helpful. I would say that we have our community has a high vaccination rate. So it's thinking about consequences, not just personally, but also thinking beyond our community, helping folks think about their collective impact. So thinking about not just self-care, but collective care, those kind of concepts, which you all are, I see heads nodding, so you'll do those, that's so intensive. Those are important pieces. And obviously that's a very important question, and we're constantly thinking about it, but I'm curious if people have other ideas, or if you could, please let me know if you have ideas or opportunities for us to be present in conversations to help.
Point of order, that a lot of time for this section is over. If senators want to continue to vote on this section, they're welcome to do so.
If not, we'll move on to our next agenda item, presentation from Vice President of Student Affairs, Charlotte Johnson. And she will be coming at approximately 1:45, so we'll be taking a recess for the next approximately 5 minutes. So feel free to get up, stretch, grab some food. I also just want to just reiterate again, thank you very much for coming today. Really appreciate it. Actually, me a motion to go into recess. I was just reminded, sorry. Do we have any motions on the floor? Lauren?
Enter into a 5-minute recess.
We have a motion being seconded to enter a 5-minute recess. Do we have any further discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those opposed, and all those who abstain. All right, we'll now enter a recess. Motion passes.
No, that's great. I apologize. Any questions? You do great work.
All right, everybody, we are back in order. Our next and final item on new business for the agenda is a presentation by BPSA Charlotte Johnson. So, Charlotte, please feel free to take it away.
Sean, you sounded like you were way off in the distance somewhere. It's so funny.
Sorry about that.
No, it's good. It's so funny. It sounds like we're on a talk show or something. Next, Charlotte Johnson. So I don't know if I do. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Oh no, sorry. I don't have slides. Oh yeah, that's it. Oh okay. Oh, thank you. Hello? Okay, good. Thanks so much. So, thank you everyone. It is so wonderful to be here. I was just having lunch with the commuter assistants earlier today, and I said, hey, it's been sort of a SHITTY day, but the highlight is I get to meet with students today, so I got to have lunch with the commuter assistants, and now I get to present to you, though I don't know that I really want to call this a formal presentation, because it isn't. I want us to get a chance to get to know each other, and this is sort of a meet and greet, right? So I'm new. I started on August 2nd, and for those of you who don't know, but you know now, I'm the new Vice President of Student Affairs. And one of the things that that I've been doing is sort of, not sort of, but in these last weeks, meeting with tons and tons of people, including students, including my colleagues, to get a sense of USD and to get not only a sense of the culture, but to get a sense of what's on everyone's minds, and students' minds specifically, as I sort of work across my division to formulate priorities and a vision, as everyone talks about, like, what's your vision? I'm like, well, I've been here 2 months, so I don't really know that I have a vision yet, but I do know that whatever it ends up being, I want to have had student voices play a significant role in that. So I start off by saying, sort of to that end, I'm so thankful for your volunteerism, for your willingness to step up and serve in these roles, because I know that there are a million other things that you could be doing, yet you've chosen to do this, and in doing so represent your various constituencies. So thank you. And I hope to get to know each and every one of you. I mean, I will get to know each and every one of you, I'm sure, by name over the course of this semester and the coming weeks and months. So just a little bit about my background, so you know how I'm anchored. I am a lawyer by trade, so I spent the first 10 years of my career as a litigator, as a lawyer, and loved it. It was great. It was so wonderful and spectacular in many ways, and I was blessed to be in that position. But I didn't want to do it for the next, my entire career. But I wasn't really sure what I would do. Like, what would I do if I didn't practice law? I mean, I spent so much time and effort and money to, invest in my education to become a lawyer. I'd done it for a decade. I was a partner in my firm. What do I do? And so I just call it divine intervention. That I was able to get into higher education because of a network that I had, made and sort of created over time. And I was tapped to come to the University of Michigan Law School, which is my alma mater, and take on this new position called Director of Academic Services. So that's how I got into higher education, and I feel like higher education is a calling for me. You know how you hear, I'm Catholic, born and raised Catholic, practicing Catholic, though I respect and admire all other faith traditions, and I expect and admire those who haven't quite figured out if they have a faith tradition, and if they are spiritual, and if they want to worship a God. I also respect all of that, right? But I'm Catholic, practicing Catholic, and we talked about a lot when I was growing up, the calling. Like, will you be called to be a priest? Will you be called to be a nun, or will you be called to be a brother? And so I feel like higher education is this calling, and that I was put here for a reason. education for me and my family's trajectory has been the thing that took my family from 2 generations ago to my grandparents being, you know, from an illiterate grandfather on the paternal side to very limited formal education for any of them to, you know, now, a couple generations later, 2, 3 generations later, having every profession represented, business owners, entrepreneurs, you name it, we have it in our family, and that's because of the emphasis on education. I have also seen how I've seen how education has sort of pulled my family's trajectory forward, and through that it's pulled families forward and communities forward. And so that transformative power of education is something I very much believe in, and I'm so glad to be here and working on many different levels to impact your lives, to impact the lives of students, and to help move institutions forward. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think my priorities might be, and then I'm just going to open it up because Sean said to make sure I leave time for questions or comments or concerns. So I don't know, like, people say, what's your vision? I'll work on, you know, we'll figure out what that sort of strategic vision is. And I don't fret too much about that, right? Because I know there's some things that we can be working on while we're thinking about what that sort of pretty picture vision is going to be. And I have a reputation for focusing on student well-being. So thinking about things, and I see Dr. Burton in the back, student wellness, so well-being, student mental health. And one of the things that I already know I want to prioritize here, and I am prioritizing, and Chris and Jalitza and Jen and everyone are helping us think about it, and everyone helping us think about it is how do we work collectively to create layers of support for student well-being, not just around mental health, but around a holistic wellness model that incorporates not only physicality, but emotional, spiritual, psychological, financial well-being. Like, how do we build that here? And one of the things that we're beginning to talk about really openly right now is how would a wellness center, where we incorporated the physical fitness piece, which I think students would love because I hear lots of you have gym memberships at other places that you don't necessarily work out on our campus, but how can we not just incorporate the physical fitness pieces, but the other sort of components of wellness into one sort of space on campus? So that holistic wellness model is something I'm thinking about a lot. And the other thing that I think about a lot is sort of inclusive excellence. So I've been sort of terming it the thriving student framework, which, you know, other schools think about students in this, under the umbrella student success, under these sort of auspices of a thriving student model. But for me, it means how are we thinking about reducing barriers and providing support for students no matter what experiences they come here with, no matter what level of preparation they come here with, no matter what resources they come here with, no matter what identities they come here with. So when I think about a thriving student framework within the context of inclusive excellence, I think about only being able to declare victory in my role when the least of us, those who come to us with the least resources, the least sort of connection to the information pipeline about how to be successful in colleges and universities or in this setting, those who come to us with the least amount of preparation because they weren't fortunate enough to go to some of the more well-heeled resource schools, when they're succeeding consistently and day after day, then maybe I can sort of plant a stake in the ground, right? How do students who come to us with learning disabilities, how do students, you know, when all of those students, and I say the least of these not to be pejorative in any way, but to say, hey, when we think about inclusive excellence, we have to think about how we move all students towards success, and how we remove barriers and create support systems. So I'm going to stop there because it is now 1:57, and I know I've got to leave at 2:15 because I've got a meeting at 2:15. But I'm going to open it up for questions.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much for coming again. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns for BPSA Johnson? Madeline?
Well, if we don't have any, can we just go quickly around the room and say your name and your year?
Sure. I think we have a quick question from Madeline.
Oh, do we have a question? Oh, good. See, there's that first brave soul.
Hi, my name is Madeline. I'm a sophomore. So I know your goals were more like overarching, but I asked the constituent what they wanted to hear from you, and they wanted to ask about the COVID guidelines.
Yes.
Well, like with the quarantine situation, there was a problem where a whole class was quarantined, but they weren't supposed to. The classes got mixed up. And I think there's like a problem with having more information, like when you reach out to students and say you've been contact traced, there's not much information. So has there been talks about including like what class it was, maybe the time, and just some more personal interaction, because when the student reached out again saying that you put me in quarantine but I wasn't supposed to be there, a kind of automated message was sent saying, we're sorry, but thank you for doing your part.
Mm-hmm. So that's good feedback. I hadn't actually heard that. So we are consistently refining our processes for quarantine, our COVID management processes. And I'm not going to sit here before you and say they are perfect, but I will sit here before you and say they're pretty damn good, especially since no one's been through a pandemic and we're all sort of, doing this together and learning some things together. So we do have a combination in this process of notification of an exposure. It is both a process that is assisted by technology and one where we do have real people in the form of contact tracers and folks from Dr. Burden's team and others reaching out to students for the more personal touch. And so I'm really sorry that happened, number one. And I would say I'll take this feedback back to the team. I actually meet with the COVID management group every morning at 8:30. So this is some feedback that I can give to them, and I will. And then the other thing I'd say is we're consistently trying to communicate and clarify what our process is, what students need to do if they get an exposure letter, if they test positive. We just sent out a communication to the COVID action team earlier this week to try and clarify. We're also working on, at the suggestion of a member of the ASG Executive Council, it was Sheehan. Is she in here? Anyway, at the suggestion of Sheehan, we're also working on an infographic. And we're refining these processes as we go along. So feedback like this is really important. And what I would invite the students that you heard from to do is they can write to the COVID support group and express the concerns or provide the feedback, because we consistently take this into consideration as we're thinking about our processes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions, comments, concerns?
Okay. No? All right, I expect it to be grilled, but I'm sure the next time I come I will be, because you'll be up and running by then. And I understand you're all just getting together for the first time today? Or second time. Oh, Sean's on the ball. Well, it has been a real pleasure. Thanks so much for your time and attention. My office is across the way in Han. I'm Han 232. Open door, open door when it's open, but any of you are welcome to make appointments with me at any time. And I look forward to getting to know you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Our next item on agenda, our final, will be final business and hearing of the public. The public is invited and encouraged to attend and participate in all Associated Student Government Senate meetings. All meetings are open to the public, and participation and discussion is welcome during final business and hearing of the public. comments, questions, concerns, or motions to adjourn? Arissa? We have a motion being seconded to adjourn this meeting. Any further discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards. All those who oppose, and all those who abstain. This meeting is adjourned.
Right here.